Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Reaching Higher, which is a 6-part video series brought to you by Ulster Bank and the Irish News. I'm Lynette Fay and today I am joined by fellow County Tyrone native, broadcaster, comedian and science communicator Emer Maguire. Now, Emer has been making waves in the world of media and science alike thanks to her very unique blend of comedy and science and her very quick-witted and quirky style on stage. Yes, I am quite nervous ahead of this interview, but she's here to tell us how she came to broadcasting and comedy almost accidentally and the challenges that she has had to overcome along the way as well. Emer, you're very welcome.
Thanks very much for having me.
Well, a glance at your website, Emer Maguire, tells me that you are into communications. You are a communicator. Yeah. But, Emer, when you started out, you were painfully shy. So that was one of the challenges you have had to overcome. How did you go about that?
Yeah, that was a massive challenge for me, and I always felt pretty shy, you know, particularly primary school. And then when I moved to big school, I always felt like I never wanted to be the person to put up a hand in class, and I never wanted to, you know, shout out the answer. I always felt like I kind of knew the answer, but I didn't want to draw attention and things like that. So I really feel like I was painfully shy, and it was quite strange for me. Like, I was always a musician, that was always my thing growing up, and I loved playing music, but I never, in primary school and things, wanted to play in front of anyone. I remember in primary school we had to try out for the school choir, and I kind of stood up, it was my turn, and like I was just standing there like ready to burst into tears. I was so terrified. I really didn't want to do it. So I didn't have any plans to like do comedy or do anything on a stage. I probably wanted to be a songwriter, really. Write songs and write music and write scores and things like that. But I kind of fell into this world of doing science communication and presenting and things by accident. I kind of came about that by randomly entering a science communication competition. I didn't even really know it was a thing. The reason I entered that was to try and improve my confidence and to try and get a wee bit of experience in public speaking, because I felt like there were a few things that I was good at. Like, I was good at being creative, and I wanted to get experience of maybe writing talks and writing scripts and things like that, and I felt like I could perform them well if I was in a room by myself with nobody watching. And I always felt like that missing ingredient that I never had, whether it was music or whether it was, you know, writing and things like that. I always felt like I didn't have the performance side of it or the confidence side of it. So I really entered that competition with a bit of a view to improve that and really to push myself. And the first few times I spoke on stage and things, it terrified me. I was so sick with fear. I didn't want to do it, but it really helped me. And I mean, I would still get stage fright a little bit, like a tiny bit, a little bit nervous, but at the start, the stage fright I would have had was horrendous. And I really think purely through exposure and really pushing myself, I have improved that. So people who say like they're not good at public speaking or they're not good at like presenting to people or presenting at work, you really can improve that, because I have like what I do in terms of talking in front of people, none of the confidence was natural. Like, I really had to learn that, and it was because I kind of made a conscious effort to do that, because I felt like it was something I had missing.
So did you decide yourself that you needed to work on this, or had you other people trying to guide you and, you know, make you or help you with your confidence, is what I'm trying to say?
No, so I just decided myself, and I maybe it's a personality thing, you know. I always would have been a bit of a perfectionist, and I always would have been like a bit of a wanting to be a high achiever and all that. And I know, like, at school I was so into music and so into sports, so into English, like so into my studies and things like that, but I never really had the confidence in front of people to go along with it, if you know what I mean. So I just always felt like it was something I needed to improve, basically. So I felt like I had all these things and there was this big gap that I needed to improve. So I kind of pushed myself towards that. No one had ever really said it to me. I do think that people probably, to meet me like in a friendship circle or whatever, maybe would have thought I was very confident, but if you had put me in front of a class or in front of a group of people, I would have gone to pieces. Like, I maybe would have made a bit of a joke to be like, oh, this is stupid, I'm not doing this. You know, that's probably how I would have been in class.
Yeah, but I imagine there's a lot of people listening to you now who completely identify with what you're saying, because they were that student in school who was afraid to put the hand up or afraid to speak out, because you are always afraid of someone pulling you down again. And I think it's natural, and it's a natural thing to want to get over it, but it's I think you having that proactive attitude. It says a lot, and it's no surprise why you're sitting here today to tell us about, you know, being a communicator. But let's talk science, Emer. Because you're known now, you are the go-to science woman. You
Which
really
is hilarious.
are.
I was so bad at science in school. I wasn't bad at it. I just hated it. It was the one thing I didn't like.
But this is what I didn't understand. I didn't realise that. So how does it come now that you are the very person who will stand up and tell us all about how brilliant science is? So how were you converted?
Yeah, so it happened totally randomly, right? So see in school, like I was saying, music, sports, English, like psychology, those were my things. See science, I was alright at it. It was fine. I was bored out of my head. I hated it. I had no passion
Physics,
towards
chemistry, and biology, maths.
Biology was okay. Like I was quite good at physics actually. Biology, I thought it was interesting enough. See chemistry and maths, like I was fine at them. I was probably average in the class, but I was so bored. Like I was so bored by them. I hated them. Like I'd rather be sitting in English writing an essay. Or, like, would you not just rather be sitting in music, playing your guitar, or playing football? It wasn't my thing. It wasn't my area of interest. So I kind of, for A level, didn't do any science or anything. I did like my music and my English, psychology, that kind of thing. And then it came about by accident. So I wanted to do music at uni. And people kept saying to me, "Oh, it's great, you're gonna be a music teacher." Like my mum's a teacher, my uncles and aunts are all teachers, and I just thought, I don't want to be a teacher. That's just not for me. I couldn't imagine myself in that role. And people were kind of saying, "I know, but like, you know, that's kind of what you do if you do music. You know, like what else are you gonna do? Like you're gonna be Beyonce, do you know what I mean?" So I thought, God, if I do music, am I gonna be really stuck to this? So my mum gave me pretty good advice and said, "Look, why don't you do the music on the side? Like, you're a songwriter, you can do all that. You don't need a degree to do that." And I thought, that's a pretty good idea. And it was kind of encouraged maybe to do something a bit more vocational. And my friends were staying in Belfast, so I just opened the Queen's and the Georgetown prospectus and looked through them and nope. And I saw speech and language therapy. And I thought, language, kind of related to English and communication, I'd probably quite like that. And I put my application in for that and got in, and was like, well, sure, I'll have a degree now. The parents will be happy. I'll fall back in that. Didn't have a clue what it was.
No master plan.
No, didn't have a clue what it was about. I thought you sat in a room with kids and kind of kids with lisps and things and play games, which I was like, that'll suit me. So I started the course, and then the modules suddenly were like anatomy and neurology, and there were all these science modules, and I thought, like, dear God, like I've made a mistake. I'm going to be terrible at this. And really bizarrely, when I was doing science in that way, where it was related to everyday life and related to communication, and you could kind of use that science to help other people communicate, I suddenly thought, like, this is pretty cool, this is amazing. So after I did that undergraduate degree, I saw that Queen's had a master's in anatomy, a clinical anatomy, and it kind of said that, you know, if you medical degree or dentist to get in, but I kind of chanced my arm and says, here, is there any chance you'd let me in to do that master's? Like, it was the first year of it and stuff, and they said yes anyway. I applied and I got in, and like, I just loved it. It was anatomy, it was practical, it was like dissections and all that. It was all about the brain, the spinal cord, evolution, and I just really, really fell in love with it. And that kind of really ignited the passion that I didn't have at school. Maybe it was just at school, like maybe I wasn't mature enough to appreciate it. Maybe it just wasn't the type of science I was interested in. And then from there on in, I started to kind of investigate and look at science that was relevant to the everyday, and science that, you know, people could relate to.
Yeah.
So not this abstract theoretical science that, you know, any random person on the street would kind of be like, that's a bit dull. I wanted to know about, like, the science of why people enjoy music, or why people dance, or like, why do you fancy that person? Do you know what I mean?
It's all about being relatable.
Totally.
And I think what you're saying as well, Emer, is that you didn't follow any specific master plan, which I think is
Not
really,
at all.
it's really important though, I think, for kids to hear that. You know, anyone who is 16 to 18 years of age, facing into GCSEs or A levels with massive decisions to make, where they feel that their life depends on the decisions they're making right now, it is reassuring for them to know that it doesn't matter about how you get there, it's all about the destination, isn't it?
That's true, and I think just if you follow your passion, you know, obviously at my school, maybe, like, my school was a pretty academic school and probably would have been pushing you to do science and maths as opposed to the other, you know, more creative subjects. And and I just thought all this time I've just followed my interests. So my interest was music at the time, so followed that, and then once I kind of had that passion ignited for science, started to follow that interest. And it's hilarious now because a lot of my career is based around communicating science, and I got into that kind of through this science communication competition that I did. But it's all, I think if you just kind of, it sounds a bit cheesy, but if you follow your heart and your interest, you'll kind of end up, I think, where you're supposed to be.
It's true, because you'll work at it.
Exactly.
You'll be dedicated to it and genuinely interested and intrigued, and that guides you along.
Yeah.
So where does comedy come into all this? Because you are a comedian, and you know, confidence seems to be a prerequisite for any comedian, anyone who wants to get up on stage and be funny. So
yeah,
you know, I'm really interested in this part of it.
I think if you are someone who has planned your entire life to be a comedian, and you're someone who was very disruptive in the class, always making jokes, or if you're someone who always wanted to stand up in front of parties to make people laugh, then yes, I think you inherently probably have quite a bit of confidence, but that wasn't me. And I kind of, like, I never would have considered comedy as a career. Like, if you had asked me that when I was in school, like, I would have died on the spot, you know. But I kind of fell into that by accident. So I started doing these science talks, basically, and they started to be about things I was interested in, like I was saying, the science of love, the science of flirting, the science of music. But because my personality with my friends is like a bit of crack and like lighthearted and everything like that, on stage, like when I was giving science talks, they were quite jokey and quite jovial, and like people would have been laughing, and then people would have started like referring to me as a comedian. And at the start, I would have been like, no, just to stop you there, like, I'm not a comedian, because I didn't want people to think that I thought that I was funny or that I wanted to be a comedian.
The label.
Because that wasn't the case at all. I was just talking about science, and I happened to be a bit of crack, basically, because that's how I would want to learn about it. So after a while, I just thought, well, why am I so afraid of calling myself a comedian? And then I started to do, you know, with the science talks, I started to write musical comedy songs to go along with the talks. And then it quickly evolved into, those were the parts of the talks that people really, really loved, like the best parts of them. And from that, people then started asking me to come and perform at events and things and do the songs, and companies started to ask me to write comedy songs on specific topics, and people started asking me to write comedy theme tunes.
Is that how this all became a business for you? Is that how you became employed in the way you are right now? Now, I know that you also have you had a full-time job as a speech and language therapist. Then a couple of years ago, with all these extra things that were going on, you realised there might be an opportunity here. So you played it safe and you went 50-50, is that right? Yeah,
so I was full-time, for ages, and it was great, but it started to get quite difficult because I was doing more and more of the creative stuff, and I was starting to have to say no to things I wanted to do, obviously, because I was working part-time. And then, like, probably about a year ago, I took a big risk and went part-time, only, to 2 days a week, which, as everyone keeps reminding me now, was a great idea. Like, it's not like there was going to be like a worldwide pandemic or anything. So comedy is always a good career choice. So I went part-time, went 2 days a week.
Hindsight's 2020, isn't it?
Yeah, and the thing is, it was because things were building and it kind of did start to turn into a business. So any comedian knows that comedy gigs and stuff don't pay great, and things like that don't pay great. So the good thing about my comedy is that it's the kind of comedy that I would want to go see, but like I'd like to be able to bring my ma and maybe my granny if I wanted, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's family friendly. There's a little bit of innuendo and all that kind of thing if you're there with your friends, but it's kind of for everyone. And the good thing about that is a lot of businesses and companies then ask me to be like their comedy performance at events or at awards or whatever, because it is appropriate and it is for everyone and it is a bit of crack. So people just started to ask me to do more and more and more, and then it kind of evolved to doing like comedy at events, and then like hosting events and hosting panels. And it's good because people always ask me to do ones that are general, and then people ask me to do ones that are related to science and tech. People ask me to do ones that are platforming women in science or women in comedy. So there's kind of a lot of aspects to it, which is good.
And do you think, you've just tapped into a niche here, that you've been very lucky and fortunate with your skills and timing and the way the world's going, that there's a demand for what you're doing?
Yeah, I definitely think it's niche. So, say in Northern Ireland, there are a few science communicators. In England, there are quite a lot of science communicators. There are not as many female science communicators. There are even less female science communicators who are actually comedians, and there are even less female science communicators who are comedians who do musical comedy. So once you kind of put those things together, it's very, very niche. And even musical comedians, like there's not, maybe quite a few years ago there might have been a bit of a golden age of musical comedians, but I think it's not really the case at the minute. And whenever you mix that with the kind of comedy that I do, that's kind of like witty and a little bit of facts thrown in and things like that, and it's the kind of comedy people listen to and they learn something at the same time, I think that is quite niche, and it fits quite a lot of specific events. So like say companies, like it's quite a good fit for that kind of thing. It's also quite a good fit for say like older school people, school leavers, and it's a good fit for kind of nights out and that kind of thing. So it is niche, but it kind of is mainstream at the same time.
Well, it's also a good fit for media outlets, because you've also, as a result of your skills and your niche skills, you've fallen into broadcasting as well, and you're very good at it, as your IMRO awards have proven. And congratulations on those.
Thank you.
They're very well deserved. You're now a contributor. You are a go-to voice and a trusted voice that people will contact now. And I'm sure the wee girl sitting in the classroom, who was afraid to put her hand up, you can't imagine that this is your reality sometimes.
Yeah, it's totally weird. Like, my mum just thinks this is hilarious. She's like, if I text her and say, like, Mum, I'm on the radio today, like, she's like listening all day in preparation, and she just texts me every time after, and she's like, this is amazing, I'm so proud, I can't believe, like, you're doing this, especially the science bit. Like, she'll ring me up and she'll be like, this is just hilarious to me that you are talking about anything, never mind science. So it is weird for me. It's probably really weird for me because I never planned it, and I really like that it has all happened by quite a happy accident. I really like that I'm not the kind of person who wanted this type of job and pushed for it and really like put myself forward for everything. I like that it's kind of all fallen like this, and even gigs, or even a lot of the opportunities that have come my way. Like, I've never sent like an email or a message or anything saying like, can I do a gig here or do a gig there, which is good, because like that wouldn't really be in my personality. I would be quite shy about that. I wouldn't want to ask that kind of thing, or can I be on this show, or can I be on that show? So it's probably quite good for me, even confidence wise, that all the opportunities have come to me. And I don't mean that in a lazy way, or I don't want to have to approach anyone. I mean it purely from I would be shy about that, and I would find that quite hard. I think if you wanted to be, if you've always wanted to be this person like on stage and things, maybe you have that personality where you're able to go for stuff like that, but I would find that hard. So I'm very, very lucky how everything's panned out.
When you say, it's a happy coincidence that you've ended up being a communicator in science and specialising in science, but you've also got a very important role there as a woman in science.
Yeah.
You're breaking down an awful lot of stereotypes. Do you feel a responsibility in that role?
I do. I think whenever I'm at events, or I've been at events in the past, and you see a panel and it's just like 5 guys, it's just like a manel right in front of you, that does annoy me a little bit, because I do think surely there's a woman in the entire
Somewhere.
Northern Ireland that you could have picked. Who would have been? I could name 10 women you could have picked for that. So that kind of thing does frustrate me. So I do like that. Whenever I'm at events, if I'm hosting and it's a science event, that there's a female host, and it's really clear that that person has a really big role in the event. So I like it from that point of view. I like it if there are a lot of women in the audience, or if there are a lot of younger girls in the audience, that they're able to see that the person who's kind of anchoring the event is a female, because I do think that's important. I didn't know science communication was a career. If I had have, maybe I would have been interested and come to it sooner. I didn't really know kind of having events and things about science, or like I couldn't name, from being younger, apart from Victoria Wood, I couldn't name a big woman comedian that I was aware of, So I do think it's good for people, even to see people like them, and there have been different things, like even like female science, people in science, whatever. Like I do think I'm also a wee bit different in the fact that I'm probably more alternative than if you see a girl who's reading the news or whatever. I'm probably a slight bit more alternative, that I'm always on and people are always seeing me just in my shirts and things. Like, and I have got, like, I know previously on BBC I put up a video and things, and there was a man had commented about the fact that I was wearing shirts and things, and no, you're a boy and you're wearing shirts and all that. And I just thought at the time, well, it's quite good for other boyish little girls who's watching this who are into science and things to be able to see someone like me and think, I don't have to look like every newsreader to be able to stand on a stage or to be able to present the camera and things. So I do like that, yeah.
The way you come across is that you're really comfortable in your own skin. You're representing on so many different levels. And interesting that you mentioned Victoria Wood there, because you have been called Ireland's Victoria Wood, I think, at times as well, Emer.
Yeah.
So you'd be happy with that, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's probably my favourite thing ever. Like, quite a lot of people have said that over time, and every time they say it, I'm just like really insanely flattered, because I love Victoria Wood. I think like her songs are so relatable, so funny. Yes, they were before my time, but so there's a certain old-fashionedness about them, but I kind of like that because it means that same thing, like they're mainstream, they're for everyone, they're family friendly, and I think she's really intelligent, and her writing is hilarious. So, I mean, that's a comparison that I'm very, very happy with.
That's what you're all about.
Yeah.
So finally, Emer, what advice would you give to your younger self, looking back, if you had it all to do again, what would you tell yourself to do in order to move forward?
I'd definitely tell myself to be more confident, obviously. Like, I did always have, this is quite a strange way to explain it, but I always had like a quiet confidence within myself, whether it was like music or football or whatever it might have been. Like, I always knew that I could do something, but it was almost, when you included other people in the mix, I was almost paralysed by the fear of people being there, or not wanting to look stupid, or not look like I know what I'm doing. So I would just tell myself to wise up, be a bit more confident. And like you're saying there about being comfortable in my own skin, like I am a laid back, comfortable, confident person. Like, that's probably how my friends would describe me. But I wasn't always, and like I think it's good to always to tell your younger self just to be comfortable being who you are, you know, from as early as possible, because good things can only come from that. But yeah, and I think I would kind of not worry about what other people would think. So maybe I would have considered comedy as a career if I hadn't, you know, I probably would have worried about what if people don't think I'm funny, or what if people don't like me, or what if people don't like my songs, or what if they don't like my voice, and all this kind of thing. Whereas now I'm just like, well, if people don't like it, some other people will like it, you know what I mean? So probably tell myself not to worry about what people think, and just be yourself, and be a little bit more confident.
Great advice, Emer. Thanks very much for talking to me today, Emer Maguire.
Thank you very much.
Audio Jungle.